floppy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Misa and today I'm going to be talking about the 12 biggest books on my TBR. Behind me you'll see a different set of shelves to the ones I had in a previous video because I just moved these shelves behind me yesterday. I put my shelves there because I wanted to put all my unread books on these shelves. Not all of them fit actually, but that just goes to show how many books I have unread in my collection. I actually have more than I can read in 1 year, I think, on my TBR. Anyway, that might have seemed a bit irrelevant, but when I was looking through all the books in my collection to put on these shelves, I came across these 12 books that I'm going to be talking about today. Before I dive into the books for today's video, I should let you know that all the books that I've chosen have at least 600 pages or above, and they have been ordered from shortest to longest. Now, because there are 12, that's quite a lot. I will not be going into the synopses of these books, and also because these books are really famous, so I don't think that you need any extra introduction from me. Some of the books on this list have been on my TBR for a very long time, like up to 15 years maybe, and there are 12 of them, so it will be perfect if I can get through one per month in 2021. So that is the plan, but I'm not quite sure whether I'll manage that. But if I did get through these books this year, I would be very impressed, but also I wouldn't even recognize myself because I usually am not so good at reading massive books, but I would like to change that this year. Before I show you the first book, if you have any guesses as to which books might be on this list, please type them down below. I'll give you a little hint that there's only one fantasy book in this list, and I think these 12 books make a good cross-section of my reading taste in general. So let's get started. The first book on this list is Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, obviously non-fiction, and it comes in at 625 pages. So the fact that this is the shortest book on the list is a little bit daunting already, but anyway, this book has been on my TBR for quite some time. Although when I look at the price tag, I have a Malaysian price tag here, so that means that I've had this for less than 10 years. I think this is a pretty important read for everyone, so I am really excited to get to this book sometime this year. The second book I'd like to talk about is Moby Dick by Herman Melville, a classic obviously, and it comes in at 648 pages. These pages have browned a lot, and this is what happens to books when you live in Malaysia. It's so humid here. This is not as bad as some of my other books, but this is one thing that I don't really like about having a huge book collection when you live in such a hot and humid country. I am trying to transition into reading books on Kindle. However, when it comes to large books, I prefer to read them off a print edition rather than an ebook because you can see where you've got up to, and I think it's more motivating to see how much you've finished and everything. So this is another one that I'm really excited to get to. The third book on this list has also been on my TBR for a very long time, so maybe I should just stop saying that because pretty much all of them except one have been here for quite some time. And this is Donna Tartt's Secret History, and this comes in at 658 pages. I don't think I need to say anything about this book other than the fact that it's dark academia, so that's the third book. The next book on my list is Stalin, The Court of the Red Tsar. This comes in at 672 pages. It's a non-fiction, of course, and this is the oldest book on my list today in terms of me owning it, not the publication, but I think I've had this for about 15 years and it's sat there unread all this time. I bought this book when I was a student and I was doing a research project on early 20th century Russian piano music. I never finished that degree actually, but I decided to hold on to all the books that I bought in relation to that research project. So this is why it's still here, and I moved with this book from Australia to Malaysia. Now we're moving away from the 600s range in the page count department and jumping straight up to the 800s because there were none in the 700s. The next book I have is also my newest acquisition. I just bought it this month because I couldn't resist after seeing it so much on BookTube, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. And this comes in at 804 pages, so it's quite a chunky book. My TBR for this month also has another dragon book, which is Fireborn, and when I was buying that book, I couldn't resist buying this as well because I love dragon books so much and I've heard so many good things about this book. The next book is already on my TBR for this month, so you might already know which one this is, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and this comes in at 814 pages. It's interesting that this is the 6th book I have, so that means that it's only going to get longer from here, which is kind of scary. But when I was picking this book for my TBR, I thought this is a huge book, but now looking at the rest of the books, well, this seems small by comparison. I haven't actually started this book yet, but it's okay because we still have about 10 more days of January. I'm not too concerned anyway if I have to carry this over to the next month. The 7th book on my list is a Russian classic, and this is one of my 2 Tolstoys that are on this list, so that's a dead giveaway. But the first one is Anna Karenina, and this comes in at 817 pages. I have a huge interest in Russian culture and literature. I've visited Russia, I love it so much, and at one point I was also studying Russian in my 20s in relation to my research project. This is another one that's been on my TBR for a really long time, and a quick glance at the price tag shows me that I bought this in Australia, so it has been here for at least 10 years. But I love Russian culture, so I'm really excited, and 2021 is going to be the year I get to this finally. The 8th book on my list is another non-fiction, and it's a history. I think this is the least talked about on BookTube, and in fact I don't think I've ever seen anybody else talking about it, and that is the true story of the vendetta of the 47 Ronin from Akko. This book comes in at 843 pages, and this saga is a real historical event. Talking about the feudal system of historical Japan is definitely outside the scope of this video, but to put this extremely simplistically, the Lord of Akko was forced to die by seppuku. That incident was considered to be extremely unfair by the Ronin of Akko because they became Ronin because they became lordless after their lord was put to death. So they spent years planning a revenge on the person who caused this incident, and they eventually succeeded. Arguably, this is one of the most well-documented sagas in Japanese history, and a lot of Japanese people really love the spirit behind these people. In modern times, there have been numerous TV adaptations, one of which I've also watched and loved, so I can't wait to get to this book, and I'm really happy because this is in English and I read English better than Japanese. The last 4 books on this list are all above 1,000 pages. So the 9th book I have is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. I love the musical so much. I have watched it so many times, and I think I've probably memorized the whole thing from beginning to end. It is definitely one of my favorites. I don't think this is going to be particularly difficult for me to read because I already know the story really well, and I've also read the abridged version of this in Japanese when I was young. I really can't wait to get through this whole brick. The 10th book that I have for you today is 1984 by Haruki Murakami, coming in at 1,157 pages. Earlier in this video today, I did say that today's selection is a good cross-section of my reading taste, so now is the moment that I have to take that back and exclude this book from that group, because I'm not a massive fan of Murakami's writing, and I'm aware that that is probably an unpopular opinion, but I have tried several of his books and I've never really loved any of them. But this is already in my collection, so I may as well read it. The second last book I have for you today is the other Tolstoy, so of course that has to be The War and Peace, and that comes in at 1,358 pages. This book doesn't even look that big. It's tiny in my hands, but it also has tiny writing, like I might need a magnifying glass to read this. This is the one book on this list that I have tried to start so many times and never got past the first part, because like a lot of Russian literature, there are so many characters and I found it so difficult to keep track. Now we're at the last book of this list, and I'm quite surprised it's longer than War and Peace, but it might not be the case because of the printing. But anyway, it's massive nonetheless, and this is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. Surprise, surprise, this book has also been on my TBR for a very long time, like 10 years. So now all that's left for me to do is to try and hold up these books to show you how big the stack is. Let's see how I go, because I also need to make a thumbnail anyway. I feel like this stack is going to be almost as tall as I am. Woo! So there you have it. Those are the 12 longest books on my TBR, and I hope you were able to guess some of my selections. This month I already have A Little Life on my TBR, so I'm sorted for January. But please let me know down below if you think that I should prioritize any of these books. I'm just as interested in every one of them, so I don't mind where I go next if you have any recommendations. And also if you have any suggestions on books that should be added to this list, please also let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I had fun making it. Please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more videos from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!